Thank you, friend. Shabbat Shalom. Trust yourself. Trust yourself to do the things that only you know best. Trust yourself. Trust yourself to do what's right and not be second guessed. Mishpatim, judgments. We take a break from storytelling, friends, as the Torah begins to get into some of the rules, regulations, and laws, which it will segue into over time. And this is a very interesting section called the Covenant Code. It is considered one of the oldest codes of law in the Bible. Interestingly, they're listed as hypotheticals. If you, then. And this is very odd after the incredibly personal list of rules that God just personally handed down to everybody. We are about to be given a series of laws, primarily those governing society. Don't get me wrong. There are great community laws here concerning everything from the treatment of slaves to what happens if you curse your parents, to what to do if you come across a witch. But a lot of the laws seem to be designed for a stable, fully functioning society, and perhaps a little premature for newly desert wanderers who themselves have just thrown off the yoke of slavery. But what's a society without rules? We continue to get new ones every day. It's a little bit funny, perhaps, that as society advances, we seem to get more rules and not less. They're not even replacements. They're in addition to. Just take a look at the tax code. One of my favorite lines in this parsha is when God says, "When my angel goes before you." Who doesn't love the idea of angels? But that's a whole other world. It begins with the concept of the Sabbath here, which will be expanded upon later and refers to the purchase of a Hebrew slave. And I thought it strange that the first rule given to a newly freed people was about when they purchase a slave, as if it were a regular occurrence. We're given the first hints at women's rights at a time when women were still considered chattel, and then there begins a list of crimes resulting in death. And they're based on the rules which had been given. No murder, no stealing, no dishonoring of parents. And two much debated biblical laws are introduced in this parsha. First we are told, "And if there will be an injury, then you shall give a life for a life, an eye for an eye." The much discussed biblical literature concept of a law of retaliation, the lex talionis. This is one of the most uncomfortable and commented upon of all the Bible tracts. Friends, we celebrate freedom. We teach freedom. But the Bible was not critical of the Egyptians for owning slaves, but for their treatment of them. The Torah did not abolish slavery. It stood to bring dignity, rights, principles. As Bob Dylan sang, "Wise man looking in a blade of grass, young man looking in the shadows that pass, poor man looking through painted glass for dignity, sick man looking for the doctor's cure, looking at his hands for the lines that were, and into every masterpiece of literature for dignity." This parsha is the parsha of dignity, friends. It's about protection for the powerless, as epitomized by the widows and orphans. With a fledgling nation trying to establish itself and find its own sense of freedom, key rules are put in place. Warning about injuring people, establishment of safe zones to prevent blood vengeance or blood guilt, protection for women from rape, protection for the most vulnerable members of society, prevention of cruelty and abuse. It's about fairness and equity, about stealing, killing, protecting, about taking care of someone's goods as if they are your own. And most important, perhaps, there is to be no persecution of aliens, since the people had been aliens in Egypt. And this is the first mention of many laws to protect aliens. If you had no other Torah portion, this gives you the essence of how to live life, friends. There was to be more than just dignity. There was to be respect for all. RESPECT. Find out what it means to me. God will hear the outcry of persecution of the weak, the helpless in society, and will protect them. This is Maimonides, God of mercy, that the 13 attributes will be phrased around. We are given so many clues in this parsha about life and how to live it, and yet we don't seem to really know right from wrong. In Exodus 23:2, there's an amazing warning against following a mob mentality. And a mere 100 years ago, Freud did an entire study in mass psychology of how the mob could make the most intelligent person forget they had a brain. We're told not to engage in bribery, not to oppress strangers, but a quick look around at just about any government or ruling class. And that's one we never quite got the hang of. We are told to always be of help, even to those who wish you ill. If we learned that one, we wouldn't hold on to our fear or our anger. These are great rules of morals and ethics and humanity. And the reference to Sabbath here is not theological, but humanitarian. You wear out if you don't rest, and you wear out others if you don't give them rest. And the second of the much debated biblical laws is introduced. The strange prohibition, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk, which was later taken to be the milk and meat kashrut law, and would become the basis in rabbinic dietary regulations, but perhaps was more about the morals and ethics in killing a whole family, like the Leviticus and Deuteronomy laws prohibiting taking a mother bird along with her eggs. God told us an angel will lead us, and our sages talked about an inner essence we have which makes us angelic. There's a midrash which says, in exchange for promising to do and to listen, the angels rewarded everyone with 2 crowns, and a heavenly voice exclaimed, "Who revealed to my children the secret that is used by the angels?" We have within us intuitive knowledge. Wisdom comes from study and reflection, but intuitive knowledge requires no formal training. It exists all around us in nature. Just look at the bee and how it knows how to build its honeycomb, and it exists equally in the spiritual realm. Angels don't require Torah study to know how to serve God, because it's ingrained in them. Mankind, however, needs more, because we struggle with our spiritual selves. For those who stood at Mount Sinai, it was ingrained in them too, for they intuitively proclaimed they would do. We were given inner essence, an angelic presence as part of that second crown. So we too should automatically know a lot of these things and have that intrinsic ability to know how to serve God. But we don't trust it because we get in our own spiritual way. And because this is innate within us, it leads to another question. When do we trust in God as opposed to self-reliance? And are they different? Our sages talked about reliance on God, or bitachon, as being in 2 forms, active and passive. At the active level, we trust that God will assist us to help ourselves. And at the passive level, there is a trust that God will perform a miracle when necessary, or answer a request to perform a miracle. In reality, the spiritual level of the individual determines which level of reliance is appropriate. When we recognize that God is the source of our skill and strength and see His hand in the normal course of events, then we are expected to utilize all of our own energy and talents to make things happen, like today. And when we are incapable of seeing God's help in natural events and fall prey to, "I made this happen myself," only miraculous intervention allows us to see God's hand, like when the young nation first left Egypt, crossed the Red Sea, went to Sinai, and into the Promised Land. It's like education. When we are young, all is provided and we grow and learn to be self-reliant. When the nation was in infancy, miracles were needed to instill a fundamental trust in God. And like Albert Einstein's great relativity formula of E equals mc squared, we can apply a spiritual formula to ourselves to determine our reliance level of R equals SL to whatever, or our reliance level equals our spiritual level to whatever power. We have this intuitive intrinsic power. We have this angelic inner sense. We know our power comes from God. Start trusting your intuitive knowledge, my friends. It is ingrained within you. Shabbat Shalom.